Math 2, Unit 13 review. Unit 13 had by far the most formulas of all the units. It was the one where you had to find the volume of various shapes. And I think the hardest part about these formulas was that sometimes you had to change big B depending on what the base was. So let's look at number 1 and number 2. First thing, how do I find the volume of a prism or a cylinder? We wrote down the formula big B times H. The problem with this is called the area of the base, and H, even though a lot of you know it as the height, is the distance from one base to the next. So some people, when they saw this formula, they just plugged in two things, and that was incorrect. Big B stands for the area of the base. And so, if your base is a triangle like 1A, I know that the base is a triangle because that's the shape that matches on the other side. It's the only thing in this prism that is the same on both sides. If your base is a triangle, then sometimes you have to switch big B for whatever the base is. You can't see that, so let me scoot it over just a little bit. Sometimes big B changes to 1/2 the base times height of the triangle. And then this H is the distance from one base to the next. So if I want to find the area of just this triangle, I got to have what's perpendicular to each other. So I'm going to copy that perpendicular sign over here, and I have a 12, and there's a 15, so this must be 15 as well. But I still don't have a base and a height that are perpendicular to each other. So sometimes I even have to do the Pythagorean Theorem. Let's call this A. A squared plus B squared equals C squared. And 225 minus 144 is 81, which means that A has to be 9 units long. So I have to do this extra step to find this distance, and then to find the area of the base, I now have a base and a height that are perpendicular to each other. The base of this is 12. The height of this is 9. This is big B. And the distance from this base to that base is a distance of 18. The H in this case is, this is your height. It may not look like it, but it is the one that goes from this base to that. So I'm going to plug all this stuff into my calculator. 0.5 times 12 times 9 times 18 to figure out what it says. It says 972. My answer for 1A is C. Sometimes your big B will change to a circle, pi r squared. Sometimes your big B will be a square or base times height. It just depends on what your shape is. So I'm going to skip down to C and just show you that just like before, some parts of our drawing did not come out very good. So I want you to add the line from this dot to this dot. I want you to add the line from here to there and put that right angle symbol to make sure that you're clear on what you're finding. When you look at part C, look at how the answers have the pi in the answers. What that means is that they're giving the answer in terms of pi. Don't plug in 3.14159. Just leave your answer with pi next to it. What does that mean? That means that when you're doing the area of the base times the height, and this time the base is a circle, so we'll use pi r squared times the height, pi times the radius squared times the height, don't plug in pi. Leave pi there. Do the 3 squared times 7. Do that part. 3 times 3 is 9. 9 times 7 is 63. And there's a pi next to it. 63 pi is in terms of pi. And look at your choices. They have the pi next to it. You'll be able to figure out that it is C for that answer. What's the formula for the volume of a pyramid or cone? 1/3 big B times H. The hard part about big B and H and pyramids and cones is that sometimes they try to trick you by giving you slant height. This 15, I don't know if you can see that right there because it didn't come out very good. 15 is the slant height. You're going to have to figure out what the actual height is going to the center of this thing and figuring out using Pythagorean Theorem. If this whole thing's 18, halfway is 9. To find the height, you're going to have to use Pythagorean Theorem to figure out what that height is when you're doing that problem. That's not the one I wanted to do with you. On the back side, I have 2 more, and then I'm going to let you do the rest on your own. The first one I want to do with you is part B, 2B. It says the diameter of a cone is 12 meters. The slant height is 10 meters. Compute the volume. I just recently graded this test like maybe 2 weeks ago, and so many people messed this thing up, and I want to show you how you're supposed to do this correctly. First thing I do if I'm trying to find volume is I write out the formula, 1/3 big B times H. This base is a circle. So instead of big B, I'm going to put pi r squared because that's the base. And I'm going to put the height there, like that. Now in this formula, R stands for the radius, and if you look at this thing, they did not give me a radius, they gave me a diameter. So I have to calculate what is the radius from here to here. It's 6. We should not be using 12, we should be using 6. 1/3 pi times 6 squared. And then the height has to go from the middle all the way to the apex or the highest point. I need this height, not the slant height. So to give you an idea, this is 10, this is 10. If I want to figure out what the height is, I have to do the Pythagorean Theorem not with the 12, with the 6, with the H, and with the 10. H squared plus 6 squared is equal to 10 squared. 100 is equal to 36 plus H squared. Subtract the 36, you get 64. Square root it, and you can figure out what your H is. It comes out to 8. By plugging in this entire thing, and notice they're in terms of pi, you can figure out what the answer is. Let's see. 6 squared times 8 divided by 3 times pi is, I'm getting 96 pi for my answer. The last example that I want to cover with you is the sphere. The last one that the formula you're supposed to know is how many, what's the volume, what's the formula? The volume of a sphere is 4/3 pi r cubed. You'll use that as you do 3a and 3b. And I'm going to let you do the rest of those on your own.